I've got the head of marketing from ASICS in the Middle East.
Most people struggle with that. They always ask me, is it Asics? Is it Asics?
Welcome, Ana Seixas.
Seixas. For a lot of people, when they start running, is this so typical, oh, my back hurts, my knee hurts, oh, I'm so not made for running. A lot of the times we tend to see that people that are not exercising as lazy. The less you exercise, the less you feel like exercising. 77% of women said that the number one reason for them not to exercise more was
I thought you were going to say a sexy personal trainer. Today, we're going to be talking fitness, movement, and mental health, particularly in women. And to do that, I've got the head of marketing from ASICS in the Middle East here with me, who has a name that I am already getting nervous about trying to pronounce. I've got Ana Seixas, which is spelled S-E-I-X-A-S. I think there's probably 10 or 15 different things I could have tried to say before that. But Ana,
Absolutely.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.
Although it's not just your second name. I struggle to pronounce with ASICS. I mean, I've always wondered over the years. Is it SCCS? You know, it's like a silent letter, right?
So most people struggle with that. They always ask me, is it ASICS? Is it ASICS? To be honest, both ways are right. It's a Japanese brand. We're one of the biggest global suppliers of sports equipment, footwear, apparel. Obviously, we're very well known for running. Tennis as well. Novak Djokovic is obviously wearing ASICS. But the name itself is actually an acronym. So that's why a lot of people say ASICS, because it comes from the Latin anima sana in corpore sano, which roughly translates to sound mind, sound body.
Sound mind and sound body, okay. Which brings us perfectly onto today's talk and today's study. So tell me a little bit about the study, where it came from, and why you've done it.
So a few years back, we did a study trying to understand the impact of exercising and movement in mental health. We wanted to know if there was a connection, right? That study proved there was a connection. So we now know that with 15 minutes and 9 seconds of movement, you can already start feeling an uplift, and you can already start feeling an impact on mental health.
This is per day?
This is per day, exactly. So you don't need 30 minutes, you actually just need 15 minutes and 9 seconds to feel that positivity of exercising.
And when we talk about movement, I mean, is this, strenuous exercise, or is it literally just a walk around the block, jump up and down?
So there is an element of activity that's a bit more than just walking. It's about elevating your heart rate a little bit. So it doesn't have to be strenuous activity. You don't have to do, a marathon. You don't have to run fast, but you need to elevate your heart rate so that it's considered movement.
And when you did the study before, was that on men and women?
Yes. So we did that study in men and women. And what we've noticed was actually that there was a gap. So we noticed that men were exercising more than women. This was a global average. So we did more than 25,000 people being surveyed. And in general, men were exercising more than women. In some cases, almost 20% more. So then automatically, if there's a correlation between exercise and movement and mental health, then that also meant that women were having lower scores in terms of mental health.
And presumably you did men and women in different age brackets for this as well?
Yes, of course.
And when it comes to, I guess, like categorizing or qualifying that mental health, I mean, what kind of questions are you asking them? Is it, just how do you feel about yourself, or is it a bit more granular?
Yeah, so that was exactly what we asked. So we asked people to talk about how they were feeling in terms of positivity, in terms of stress, in terms of being frustrated before exercising and after exercising. And what we noticed is that consistently people felt better across all categories after exercising. But like I said, there was this gender gap. And this year, that's what we tried to address. So we went back into the drawing board or the survey board. And then we said, let's find out why women are exercising less. Let's see what we can do as a brand to understand what's preventing women from exercising. And then obviously trying to address solutions together with the rest of the community. So that's what this study is all about, is to try to understand more about the connection between women and movement, how we're moving, how much are we moving, and therefore, how are we feeling also from a mental perspective?
And what is it that you're finding that's stopping women exercise as much as men?
Well, one of the things we've noticed is that we don't have time to exercise.
Why? What are you doing that we're not?
Well,
Or what are you not?
a lot of things, but obviously one of the key factors is just overall management of time. So in general, women tend to be really busy, especially if they are mothers. So we notice as well, as a side note, that the number one reason women stop exercising is when they become mothers. So obviously that extra effort of being a mom and having to take care of childcare removes them from exercising and from movement. Other reasons also have to do with costs. So attending the gym, getting a personal trainer is expensive, so might be a barrier for exercising as well. But most of the times it has to do with time and just having too many commitments and too many things to manage, right? So it would be like the household, the husband, the kids, work, obviously. So it just, everything adds up. And about 77% of women said that the number one reason for them not to exercise more was time.
And I mean, are you just looking at trying to find the answers to the information, or are you also giving people advice on how to change that? I mean, if I was in one of my more aggressively motivational chats, I mean, I would be saying that, you know, not having money to go to the gym is an excuse, not a reason, because we can be doing it in the park, and you know, having children, yes, it takes up time, but you can walk around the park with the baby in the rucksack if that's what you wanted to do. I mean, are you trying to help the women get back into exercise as well?
Absolutely. So that's really what we're trying to do. So first of all, awareness, because a lot of people don't have this awareness, right? So that there wasn't a clear understanding of like women in exercising and what were the barriers. So that was one of the first elements. And the second element, which is obviously what comes next, is how can we help women and how can we increase the connection in our communities to be able to remove those factors. Like you said, at the end of the day, all these factors are just external factors that we can try to change, right? One of the things that was quite interesting, and I like it because it speaks to me personally, which is the number one factor that would get more women to exercise is if they have a female friend that exercises.
I thought you were going to say a sexy personal trainer.
Well, that might help a little bit, but not a kid driver, I'm afraid. But basically, if you see your friends exercising, you feel more committed and you feel like, well, if she can do it, then I can do it as well. And one of the things that we've been very passionate, especially here in the region, is to engage with women within the running communities to get more women to run, as an example, to get more women to be active, and then consequently bringing their friends along as well. And
how are you encouraging them? How are you getting them more active? Just arranging events to drag them down too? Or?
Well, one of the things has to do just with the fact of creating safe places for women, right? So for women, a lot of times, and once again, from a personal note, is daunting, right? You go to the gym, everybody's super fit, everybody's been there like for the past 2 hours, and you get there and you don't really know where to start. So if you are starting from zero, having a female community run that is led by a woman, that is a safe space of other women that know exactly where you're coming from, then that's a good start, right? Because then when you're joining, you feel that you're joined by other people that understand also your limitations. So if there's one day that you cannot come to run because you're picking up your kids or because you're late at work, the probability that they'll understand that is obviously much higher, and it makes you feel safer and more inclined to keep coming and keep consistent, right? Because that's, and I'm sure you mentioned that as well in your conversations, it's not about what you do, but it's about the consistency,
sure.
Right? So if you find a place where you really want to be there, and if you find a group of friends, of a network of, I'm giving you running community as an example, but tennis, padel players, right? Once you find your group, then you'll feel more inclined to keep going at it and to keep exercising as part of a lifestyle and not just as, I need to because I want to lose weight, which happens a lot for women.
Do you find regional differences or geographical differences in the answers and the feedback you were getting from women? I mean, obviously, we're out here in the Middle East. Is it different between Middle East and Europe and Americas?
The numbers are, funny enough, quite similar. What we've noticed, for example, is in Saudi Arabia, the impact of movement in mental health is really, really high. And in general, Saudi Arabia was actually the second country. So it's the second country in terms of people and women specifically exercising. So there's been a really big shift in Saudi. I've just attended Riyadh Marathon a few weeks ago, and it was amazing to see the amount of people running. There was around 30,000 runners in Riyadh joining the Riyadh Marathon. Obviously, different stages, so not everybody was running the full marathon. But it was just incredible to see whole families, kids. This was not something that was there a few years back. So it's just amazing to see the change being so quick.
And you mentioned kids. I mean, we were talking just off camera before we started this that I forget the exact numbers, but you were saying that if somebody exercises between the ages of 15 and 17, there was something like they're 70% more likely to continue exercising into later life.
Absolutely. So what we see is, one, there is a correlation between you exercising as a kid and you exercising as an adult. So the probability of you exercising as an adult increases the longer you exercise as a kid. And specifically, as you were just saying, between 15 and 17. So if you exercise when you were 15 and 17, the probability of you exercising when you're an adult becomes much bigger, because it's at that stage where it becomes a lifestyle, right? It's no longer just an obligation from school or from your parents that want you to join a sports club. So that's really where you see it continuing into adulthood. But the other thing that we saw is that the younger generations are exercising less and less. So if you'd ask baby boomers if they exercised when they were 15, you'd probably see an 80% mention. When we are now asking Generation Z if they exercised when they were 15, the number drops to 35%.
I find that very surprising. It's not what I would have expected. I mean, I guess there's some immediately obvious things like, I guess in baby boomers' time, there was less technology and digital stuff to do, so you're out and about running in the park, whereas nowadays, people have got their Xboxes or Minecrafts or whatever, and that generation stops them. But then the same token, I mean, when I see the kids at school now, they're all, all the 15 to 18 year olds have got their shirt off, they're all ripped, they're all eating well, they're all eating, they're all on supplements. I mean, I've got a daughter who's nearly 18. I mean, one of her friends, I think, smokes, whereas in my generation, everybody smoked as opposed to not smoking. I just find it quite a surprising stat to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a situation that we need to keep under control, right? We need to see what's going to be the next step. But like you said, obviously the digital world has taken over. We see that with our own children, right? Like the amount of time they spend on their phone, the amount of time they spend with their PlayStations and so on. And that is taking away from social time with their friends, but also that's taking away from movement. And that's something definitely that needs to be monitored, because if we know there is this connection between exercise and mental health and positivity, then that's also affecting our youngsters.
I mean, do you find as well with them it's a kind of a vicious circle that you don't exercise, so you feel down, so you don't exercise? How do people break that cycle?
Absolutely. That's I think the key point, right? A lot of the times we tend to see that people that are not exercising as lazy, but it's not just about being lazy, right? Like there's literally, like you were saying, this cycle of the less you exercise, the less you feel like exercising. So it's important to have a good support system. It's good to have, like I said, running clubs, groups of friends, getting someone to incentivize you to go to the gym so that you feel that support when you need it. And then you start that, let's say, positive cycle of exercising and moving more. And as I was saying before, especially for women, it's really complicated, right? Because for many years, and maybe I'm just talking about my generation, but I was raised thinking that you exercise to lose weight as a sacrifice, right? So it's like exercising is difficult and hard, and you have to do it because you lose weight and you want to look better, right? So there was always this sacrifice involved with exercising, right? And now, luckily and fortunately, there's much more conversation, especially at our generation level, of seeing exercise as a positive thing. And especially I see that also with myself, right? I want to exercise because I feel better, because some days I work 12 hours, some days I spend a lot of time with my kid, and I just want to have a quiet place where I can go, put my headphones, go for a run, and not have to think about anything else, right? And that moment there allows me to disconnect from the buzz of the world, and allows me to reset, allows me to feel better. And I know now, like the days that I don't exercise, I can feel the difference, right? Like I get to the end of the day and I'm like, oh, this was a hard day. Well, when I exercise or I go for a walk, I go like, oh, time to sleep. I'm more rested. I'm more peaceful. And this, the stats prove exactly the same.
I think, for me, the key for people is to find exercise that they enjoy. And then, like you say, you've got to appreciate that you feel better after exercise, not worse after exercise, but you do, I guess, only feel better if it's if it's something that you've wanted to do, if it's something you've enjoyed. That's what makes it consistent. The example I always give is rowing, for example. I hate rowing, and if that was what I was forced to do, then then I'm never going to go and do exercise. But if it was tennis or paddle or boxing or weights, etc., then I find that I want to jump out of bed and go and do it. And I think the key for everybody is to find what they like, which is good that you've got pairs of shoes for every different activity, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because Dr. Brendan Stubbs, which was one of the researchers that worked with us on this study, he was in Dubai a few months back, and I asked him, Dr. Brendan, if we want to be healthy, right, and if we want to have this positivity and this uplift in our lives, and what is the best sport? What should I be doing? Because now everybody's talking about weightlifting, and I personally like running and paddle, but am I doing the right thing? And obviously you start getting older and you start thinking, is this the right thing for my age? And he paused, and after a while they said, Anna, the best exercise for you is the one you like. So it's so important that you find something that you like, so that you keep that consistency. It doesn't matter if it's running, if it's weightlifting, if it's salsa. What really matters is that you find something that you can keep consistently doing. And sometimes you change tastes, right? Sometimes you can be really into Zumba and then you're really into running. But as long as you keep that consistency, that's the most important. And obviously, like you said, us at Asics, we want to make sure that everybody has the right shoes, the right apparel, and that really have less injuries as well. So that's something really important for us. We also know that one of the barriers in general for a lot of people when they start running is this whole typical, oh, my back hurts, my knee hurts, oh, I'm so not made for running, right? Like I'm sure everybody knows someone in their group of friends, if not themselves, that have had this conversation. And funny enough, most of the times, I can't say it's always, but most of the times it's just because you're running with the wrong shoes. So once you find the right shoe, it will be such a big difference. And I remember the first time I tried my first pair of Asics, I was like, oh, this is what a running shoe feels like, because it's a huge difference.
I mean, what do you do with your shoes, or how do you make your shoes that make them, different or better to a Reebok, to a Nike, to whatever any brands other people like? I mean, what is it that sets your shoes apart?
Yeah, we obviously don't like having comparisons, but one of the things that's very, very unique about us is that we have our own innovation and science center in Kobe in Japan, and we have hundreds of scientists evaluating biomechanics. So we want to make sure that we understand the body, we understand how the body moves, and we want to have the shoes that are there for your type of body. For instance, we work with a lot of athletes. We work with Novak Djokovic, as I mentioned before. We bring him over. We try to understand his movement, the movement of both of the tennis players, and then create shoes for those type of movements. And the same thing for running. So for instance, if you come to an Asics store, you can actually get something that's called the Run Analyzer. So we'll get you to run on a treadmill, we'll evaluate your running, and then we will suggest the right shoe for your type of running.
There's lots of different kinds of running shoes there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you an example. So if you want to do a long distance, right? Let's say you want to do your first marathon. You want to have a shoe that has cushioning, right? You want to have a shoe that gives you that extra stability, because this is going to be your first long distance run, right? So our bodies are not prepared for 42 kilometers of running, right? Like, let's just put it like that. So you need to be able to have that extra cushioning, that extra stability that allows to tell your body and your feet that you'll be okay after 42 kilometers and a little bit. But if you're an athlete, you're there for the speed, right? You don't need a shoe that has so much cushioning. You need a shoe that's going to propel you towards the podium. And then obviously you will need a different type of shoe. So that's what we do as well. So we have some shoes that are more towards geared towards training sessions. We have shoes with carbon plate that are more geared towards podiums and running really fast during your races. And then we have shoes that are more geared towards beginners, people that are doing their first races. So I always joke saying that there is no such thing as the perfect running shoe, right? Because what's the perfect running shoe for you might be completely different for me. So it's really important, especially when you're at this beginner stage, that you go and you look for the right shoe. And unfortunately, what's happening currently is that sports shoes are a trend, right? Especially after COVID, we all went back into really nice, comfortable sneakers. And most of the brands started creating sports-looking shoes, which are not necessarily running shoes. So you see a lot of people running and a lot of people walking with shoes that are not necessarily geared for that type of activity, and therefore might increase injuries, and therefore might have lead to this type of conversations of, oh, my back hurts, I'm not really good of running, so I'll just stop doing it, which is obviously the wrong approach.
How long has the study gone on for, insofar as, I guess, have you, other than just doing the study to get the answers, have you continued to monitor people thereafter and see, so the women that you've been trying to encourage to do more exercise, have you been studying them as time has gone on to see that these positive changes actually have been happening?
So these were anonymous studies, so we do not know personally who are the people, because we wanted it to be as a sample, right? So we wanted to make sure that we had the right answers without knowing exactly who was behind those answers. But we are definitely working with a lot of communities locally and regionally as well to identify, as I said, those challenges and to help break those challenges. So we've helped create women's running clubs. We've helped create influencers or let's say ambassadors within grassroots community running clubs, because a lot of the times when we have athletes and what I call hero ambassadors, it's hard to relate, right? Maybe you can relate to them in terms of stardom and in terms of celebrity, but you always think, oh, they can afford the personal trainer. Oh, they have this chef cooking for them, right? So their level of fitness, it's almost unintelligible because they have a different lifestyle than you have, right, as athletes or as sportsmen. So what we try to do is to find people within the local communities that are true sports ambassadors, but at a grassroots level, that you can feel, well, if she can do it, I'll be able to do it as well.
And different things for kids and adults? You're doing different initiatives for the teenagers?
To be very honest, until now, we've been highly focused on adults. Because we felt that there was still quite a long way to go in terms of movement in the region, and we've seen such a big difference. I mean, like, everybody can see that both in the UAE, in Saudi, in Kuwait, after COVID and after the pandemic, the numbers of people exercising have grown so much, and it's really so beautiful to see. Even here in Dubai on Kite Beach, right? Like, it becomes so busy just with runners every morning on the weekend. So that's really, really interesting to see. But now we're also focusing on the next level, right? So now we brought also much more kids products into the region. So for the past 2 years, we now have a kids collection as well. And we're going to start having more and more activities with kids. We just sponsored a kids race in Kuwait. And it was just amazing to see, these 4-year-olds, 6-year-olds with their parents running, going obstacle races. And really, like we said previously, feeling that if they see their parents doing it, then they will probably be more inclined to be participating as well and just enjoying movement.
I did a 5K earlier in the year around the marina, and they had different age brackets at different times, and just before me it was all the little kids. And I mean, literally these like 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, you know, flying around in like half the time. With the older ones, it was quite embarrassing.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting. We just did like a little ad as well in the UK just recently called Little Reminders. So we basically invited a couple of adults into the room, similar to this studio, and we asked them, what gets you to exercise? What makes you exercise? And obviously, as adults, most of people replied, you know, to lose weight, to be stronger than my friends. So all very competitive and very focus driven, right? And then we asked kids, and everybody kind of answered around to have fun. I like movement. I like jumping. I like hula hoop. So it was all about completely changing the perspective of why we exercise. And I think that's such a nice fresh air attitude in terms of like how we see movement in our lives.
And you've mentioned a couple of times, you know, things in the region. Do you actually make different products across different regions? You know, so for example, I mean, do people run in a different way, for example, in the Middle East than they would in? It's not like in fashion, for example, where, you know, I don't know, that they'll make a particular design for one area and a different design for another geographical area, because people have different tastes.
So in terms of technology, it's the same. So we have exactly the same type of technology, because running and tennis and padel, actually people are very consistent across the world. So there is not big gaps in the way people run or the way people move. But we do have obviously collections that are more geared to the region in terms of the choice of colors. The region loves white, so we have a lot of white models in the stores. And also from an apparel perspective, obviously we live in a region that gets really hot, right? We sweat a lot when we're exercising outdoors. It's harder to exercise during the summer. So we always make sure that we have very lightweight, very breathable type of apparel, so that you can help the sports people when they're exercising outdoors.
So for anyone who's been listening or watching, who wants to get involved in some of these kind of activities in their locale, in their region, I mean, how can people find out? Where, you know, what can they contact?
Yeah, so the best way is to follow us on Instagram. Cliche, I know, but Asics AB, so Asics Middle East, that's our account. That's where we talk about all the races that we sponsor, all the activities that we do. We also have an ambassadorship program called Asics Front Runner. So every year we recruit people from, once again, the grassroots communities to be part of that program. So if you're interested, we're going to do the next one in March 2025. And if you follow us on Instagram, you'll be able to see all the activities that we're organizing.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Ana. Exercise is always, like I say, it's not my passion by any stretch, but it's certainly something that I believe is absolutely essential to, you know, to have a smiley face and to do better in business and to do better in life. So it's great to see that you know that your study has not only proved it, but that you guys are making it part of your mission. So thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.